So, just had a first look at the new face of Gaelic football. The new rules been trialled publicly for the first time in Croke Park. I'm here in the press area with Mike Quirke, All-Ireland winner with Kerry. I guess I heard you during the week saying this is the first time in ages you're excited coming to Croke Park to see a game of football, see what it's like. Did it live up to your expectations, your hopes? Did you enjoy it?
It'd probably be a stretch to say it was exciting. Yeah, I think, look, I was trying to come in here with an open mind and a kind of a positive approach to these games, because I'm conscious that the game needs a shot in the arm and it needs something to jolt it into a bit of life, that it's kind of gone to a place that nobody really is overly happy with the way the game has been the last number of years. So I am excited to see how these kind of changes were going to play out and see the variations of the play that we got to see this evening. Of course, like, it's very early days, some positives, some less positive aspects to the game, but hopefully things will become a little bit clearer as the weeks go on.
Yeah, we got our first glimpse at there's 7 core changes or enhancements that the Football Review Committee have brought, and this is the first time we've seen them publicly. It's been a series of sandbox games. I suppose, were there any that stood out to you, even though, like you say, the games weren't hugely high octane? Were there any that stood out to you as particularly impressive or enjoyable tonight?
The ones that were most impactful were definitely the structure of having 3 players in the attacking half with 3 defenders. Like, that just gives the game a structure to allow teams that when they do turn over the ball or when they do win a kick out, now suddenly you have options ahead to kick the ball. It created big options in terms of the space, in terms of running lanes, and guys to be able to move the ball much quicker from back to front. That's because everybody's not back inside their own 45 defending, and they're forced to have a bit of structure. And you could see that really played out, and that was a big aspect. I thought the kick-out part of it was really, really significant. That 40-metre arc where goalkeepers now have to get to the 21, place the ball, and now the teams are defending around the arc, so it's a little bit more difficult, and certainly we saw a lot more kick-out contests than we have seen in other games, which is great. I think when goalkeepers can run to the middle of the arc and knock the ball short to the corner of it, it becomes like an uncontested scrum in rugby, and teams just back off, whereas there's big value now to actually pressing that kick-out and forcing the contest and try and win the ball. The tap and go certainly speeded up the game. I think that'll be something that will enhance the speed of the game, which again is what we want to see. Those 3, I think, were the most impactful ones that I think we saw.
Yeah, I think we were counting in the first quarter of the first game the amount of kickouts that Leinster lost, and we were saying that when's the last time you can remember Stephen Cluxton missing that many kickouts? It's clearly made a change.
It has, yeah, and like, again, teams have very little work done, and it's the middle of October, and we understand that people aren't as sharp as they're going to be in a competitive season. But I think it's a challenge for goalkeepers, and it's a challenge for the guys that are going to be receiving the kickouts. The space is a little bit different now to what you have to play with. So for teams that want to be a little bit more offensively minded and a little bit more progressive and try and attack the opposition kickout, it's giving you a better opportunity to do it, because now it's got to clear that arc, and it's going to a lot of times become a bit of a contest, which again we want to see. Supporters want to see. It's what gets people excited. It's those 50-50 collisions and hot balls in between those situations that lead to a bit of noise in the stands as well.
I think we saw in the second game as well, I think teams were starting to push the kickouts even further out as well. They were pushing it past the 40-metre arc, and the contests were really captivating, but then those were also brilliant when you saw players playing really long balls and pushing the attack on from there.
And Nile Morgan is one of the best we've seen, obviously, in the country, both in terms of his goalkeeping, his kicking, and now his attacking play as well. He's going to be a guy who we already saw him tonight just even start to exploit those rules in terms of him getting forward into the attacking half, creating an extra man, kicking scores. I think that is going to be something that's going to be a real big issue for the Rules Committee, and how they can, I'm not sure counteract is the right word, but that is certainly something that coaches and managers and teams are going to exploit. If you've got somebody of the calibre of Nile Morgan who has the aerobic capacity to get up into the attacking half as often as he did tonight and create a spare man in effect every time, that is going to be a big problem that I'm sure they're going to face a little bit of criticism over.
And do you think that, is there a way with these rules that you can work a solution for that, or is that going to be something that they're going to have to live with if they stick with this 3-3 rule?
Yeah, like, there isn't too many Nile Morgans now, to be fair. Now we will see maybe kind of innovation there as well if the rules do stick, that the benefits of getting a goalkeeper who can get forward inside the attacking half and give you that extra man and give you that scoring threat. that may be something that people look at and look to see what type of goalkeepers we have, but also the pressure on the goalkeeper in terms of their kick out means you're going to have a guy who's skilled in that area. So I think Nile Morgan is kind of almost an exception. That, like we saw, Stephen Cluxton obviously is an exceptional goalkeeper, but he's rarely going to give you that kind of attacking threat that someone like Nile Morgan would give you. So it's just an issue that was highlighted in the second game, and I'm not sure there's an obvious solution to it. You know, fair enough, a goalkeeper who's in there may push out to a corner forward, and the corner back might have to push out one. That's real high risk stuff, and you're leaving the goal free. So like, the innovators will come up with plenty of things here that'll try and exploit the rules, but first look tonight, that's definitely something that's going to be a big issue for teams if guys like Nile Morgan are going to be that kind of a factor.
Did you identify any other areas of these new rule changes that you think maybe didn't work as well as people might have hoped tonight? Was there anything else that you saw as an issue?
The scoring is kind of different. The 2-point arc didn't really work effectively. The 4 points for goal, I'm not sure of what the actual net benefit of it is. Now, I like the arc in terms of the kick out, don't get me wrong, but in terms of shooting and getting an extra point from there, I really don't like the 45 or a free kick from outside that arc being worth 2 points. I think there's obviously a skill kicking the ball off the ground or kicking a free kick, don't get me wrong, but doing that from play under a bit of pressure in a situation where you're a little bit rushed, there's a skill in that, fair enough to reward. Taking a free kick unopposed in one sense, I'm not sure we should be rewarding that with 2 points. I'm not sure about the rewarding of the goal for 4 points. So the scoring didn't really grab me in a positive way tonight, to be honest, the scoring system. And I'm sure there'll be maybe some modifications or tweaks before that gets to Congress.
Yeah, and I think that was something we heard Aidan O'Shea saying after the first game as well, that even he felt, and he was player of the match in the first game, saying that he wasn't sure about it, and it certainly feels like there's an air from some people that they might be trying to change too much at once here. Like, do you find that some of it's too radical, or do you think it's worth trialling this stuff out?
I think we probably need a little bit of radical, to be honest. I think the game is in a place where it needs a little bit of radical. I understand that a lot of the rules are interdependent or codependent, and one kind of blends into the next one. I think the 3-up structure, the tap and go, the kick out arc, I think those are hugely significant changes to the game. The scoring system, I'm not sure, added a huge amount tonight. And again, this is very early days. We're after seeing, these are my first 2 games seeing in these rules. The players haven't really worked in them. The coaches haven't looked at ways to exploit and get the most out of them. So these are very, very raw. And we're talking about stuff now that's in its infancy. So to see this maybe through a National League or into a championship, that would be a very different set of rules that we're looking at now, and how the players go about them, even their fitness levels. Like, that game tonight is definitely a lot more demanding physically than previous games, because the pace of play was so much higher, even for the middle of October. Like, those tap and goes and those kickouts, the fact that you have a structure now that when you get the ball, it encourages you to kick it forward, which means you got to get support runners up there. So the whole pace of the game was far, far quicker than we would have seen previously.
Yeah, and we heard from John Cleary and from a few others involved that the pace of the game was really something that impacted the players tonight. Like, John Cleary was saying that after 45 minutes there were players out on their feet. Like, how do the Football Review Committee or the GAA address this if this does come in for the league?
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, because obviously what you don't want to see is a huge spike in injuries and guys pulling hamstrings or doing other soft tissue injuries, especially in a situation where you're going to be playing in late January, February, March. Pitches are going to be soft, weather is going to be poor. Like, we had kind of lab conditions tonight, I suppose. Croke Park was largely dry, bar a couple of showers here and there. Referees were on top of their game. The lines were clearly visible. Like, we were going to have venues, obviously, in the new year, which will not be up to the standard of what we saw this evening. So this is as close to lab conditions as we're going to get. And the physical aspect of it is going to be very demanding on players. I know they were talking about, the possibility of introducing like interchange players, where you're going to maybe have more substitutes. And I think that would be something that I'm not sure if it's going to come in this swathe of rules, but it's definitely something that they're going to have to look at down the line.
You've worked on coaching teams in the last few years with Laois and with Kerry, and obviously the big challenge for coaches now is that if these rules come in, their first go at this is going to be their first game in the National League in 2025. How do you think the likes of Kerry are going to approach these if they do get passed by Congress at the end of the year?
I think they're going to look at them the same way everybody else is looking at them. How can we maximise, what these rules are now giving us? And I think, the obvious ones are the ones we've spoken about is how can you maximise the offensive side of things where you have those three guys up, where you have personnel like, maybe David Clifford and Shawnee Shea and Paddy, from a Kerry context, or a Conor Callan, a Kieran Kinkinney and Paddy Small, like the options to coaches and to players and to management now, and this is it's very new and it's very dynamic. And if you can develop your game where you're defending really well and you're able to transition the ball with that structure, it just leads, like those guys, when you've got so many of those fellas who are playing at a really, really high level, the Armaghs, the Kerrys, the Dublins, the Mayos, all these teams, they will play this game and they will exploit these rules as well as they possibly can, because the structure enables them to do it. It allows you to be brave offensively, because normally we'd see at least two of those forwards would be back defending, and you might have one guy up and the gap might be too large to be able to move the ball, to kick the ball to them. Now with three up, there should be a kicking option on all the time. So I think that alone will give the game a better shape and a better structure and a better pace. The rest of the ones, it'll be interesting to see what gets through and what doesn't.
I suppose to close out, your overall instinct of how this worked, it is very fresh, like you say, we've just seen them for the first time, but there's a chance that these are going to be in place for league and championship next year. Would you be happy if this is what football looks like next year?
Would I be happy? I think what we saw tonight, to be fair, is about the potential of the rules. They certainly were far away from looking anything near perfect or something that you'd say, I like that product, I liked everything they had. I liked a lot of it, definitely, and there's very positive aspects to it, but I do think that they need to look at certain of those, like that idea of the goalkeeper getting up here is going to be a major problem. That's going to cause consternation for teams, because somebody like a Nile Morgan, I keep going back to him, or an Oran Lynch or a Shane Ryan, they're going to cause massive problems for the other team defensively. Again, the value of the 2-point arc, not so sure that even the way that affects the history of the game and the scoring charts of all the great players that went before him, not sure that needs to happen right now. I didn't see enough tonight, and obviously maybe the next games tomorrow night might change it again, but didn't see enough tonight to say that's an overwhelming success and that has changed the attitude. But the rest of them, largely, I thought they were, they showed positive potential, is the way I'd put it, really. And I think I'd be happy. Like, we've tried some crazy stuff in the National League before. Are these completely crazy? I see the logic of all of them, and I think they promote positive, movement of the ball and the stuff we want to see. So, yeah, largely happy enough. Certainly some tweaks needed, but that was to be expected.
I think when we were here last week and the media briefing was on talking about the Football Review Committee, Jim Gavin said that for most people who've been at the Sandbox games, they came away saying it still feels like Gaelic football. Like, do you think that it still, even with the drastic changes, it still feels like Gaelic football? Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, it wasn't, especially the second game. The first game, fair enough, got away from Leinster and it was over very, very quickly. Second game was a much better contest all the way through, and it was very football-like. And the rules, the players adapted to the rules really, really quickly. You could see guys, if somebody strayed beyond the halfway line, they were almost coaching themselves or refereeing themselves and saying, "Oh, you got to stay back and I got to go forward." So the players will adapt to this stuff really quickly. So I don't think it's going to be as dramatic to the face of the game as we know it, as maybe some people fear. I think the scoring thing is a big problem for people, because if that is fundamental to the game in terms of giving 4 points a goal or 2 points for a shot from outside the arc. I think the rest of the stuff, it's okay. It stays within the flow of the game. I thought, if anything, some of the rules enhanced the flow of it, like that solo and go we saw a couple of times where you get that little niggly foul around the middle third of the field just to try and slow down the team, and suddenly the guy's back on his feet and he's gone and he's soloing his way with the ball. That just, it adds to the flow and to the pace of the game, and I think a lot of that is really positive. Again, it'll be interesting.
It will. Well, it'll be very interesting to see what 2025 looks like if these rules are passed. Mike, thanks very much. We'll have another chance to see these rules in action tomorrow night when the finalists play, and there's I guess you call it a third place playoff, whatever, between the losers from tonight. But that's all from us in Croke Park, and we'll see what Gaelic football looks like in the years to come.